All right, that was an awful game, incredibly boring. Even if you like defense, couldn't have been that fun. Didn't get a great rating, surprisingly.
We did okay on our picks, though.
I knew you were going to come out with that. You can tell you did well on your picks because you've dressed accordingly. We've eschewed the fuzzy sweatpants and shirts with weird logos for a nice collared shirt. You almost tucked it in, but the untucked with the sweater it's professorial to like the 10th degree. I mean, it's amazing.
Well, we were on the news today, so you're like, we gotta dress well, but not suits, right? So it's like
clearly
this is my like, hey, I'm going to go ask the dean for a raise type of,
Oh,
yeah,
that's interesting. This is my what Adam Levine should have worn the entirety of his show attire.
Yeah, sometimes less is less.
Yeah, like less carbs for Adam Levine. Probably
just less clothes. Like, it's just less for everybody.
Probably would have good luck. He struggled. So the fact that he took his shirt off was not even one of the worst things he did.
No.
Him pretending to dance and be a background singer for Big Boy was a colossal mistake. Really tough day for Adam Levine, who I generally like. I think Adam Levine is cool. Here's what they should have done with the halftime show. It should have been just Atlanta only. So they should have started with Usher, and they should have had Big Boy. They should have had Yin Yang Twins, whole thing, and just bleeped out the entire halftime show. That's what they should have done. All right, the game itself. If you had to pick one thing from the game that happened that was important that you predicted, it is what?
It didn't actually show up this way on the score sheet because they both had decent statistical games at the end, but I thought that New England basically neutralizing Cooks and Woods was something that we both talked about. We thought that was going to be the formula, and it ended up being such.
That was a great.
And Josh Reynolds being important, but not actually converting any of those chances, and so the Rams' offense.
What I think that speaks to most actually is what one of the first things you mentioned when we were doing like our pre-Super Bowl stuff for Peter King actually a few weeks ago was the importance of not having Cooper Kupp.
Yep.
What an added dimension he brings to that offense, how important he is to the play action game, how much confidence Goff has in him. He's basically the Julian Edelman for Jared Goff, and they didn't have him, and that was huge. If I had to pick the one thing, it was what the Rams do is great in the regular season. It is simple. It allows them to be quick. It allows Goff to process fewer things, and it is hard for teams to fully prepare for on a week-to-week basis. But in the Super Bowl,
2 weeks.
There are 2 weeks. Bill Belichick is going to get the better of this, and certainly did. Goff was under pressure over 40% of the time, took over 3.3 seconds to throw on average. You're not going to win a game playing like that. It's not going to happen.
Yeah, the great thing was we talked about when we were studying, the 2 weeks off thing, and we looked at Patriots since 2006 with a bye, beat the other team by an average of 10 points, which is exactly the margin of victory last night. And while oftentimes they're facing, the fifth seed or the, whatever in the AFC, the second round of the AFC playoffs, the spreads of those games were just a little over 7. So like yesterday, not only did they win handily, they covered, and I think that was important. I agree with you. It's interesting. So and this is a little bit of folklore, but also some truth, is you look at some of the Moneyball teams in baseball in the early 2000s that were hacking their way to 100-win seasons and playoff berths and all that kind of stuff. And the thought was when they got to the playoffs, they weren't top heavy in the right ways. They weren't distributed in the right ways, and they didn't, And so I think that's an interesting thing to study is being great in the regular season a recipe for being great in the playoffs? The null hypothesis has to be yes, but there might be situations, and of course we're looking at a one-game sample. We're looking at a game where the Rams, you can make an argument, shouldn't even have been there because of the penalty and everything, but it's a good thing to ask. It's a good thing to study.
You could also make the argument that a 13-3 game probably should have been a lot higher. There were multiple opportunities for the Patriots to score many more points, particularly on defense. There was the Hightower dropped interception. Yep. There was a tipped pass that Goff had in his own end that was a bad play. It was a really bad throw. It looked like it was a assured pick and potentially a pick six at that point. Gets tipped, ends up falling incomplete. The C.J. Anderson fumble was just laying there forever, and they didn't pick it up. Could have been a lot worse, certainly.
When we were on the phone with Peter, it was the thing where
Peter getting 2 mentions in this podcast.
So it was
friend of the podcast,
friend of the podcast. That's right. So it was like
he would be here, but he's recovering from having to go. As he told us, he had to go to the party last night. So we hope he's doing okay.
But it was like a baseball game that was like a pitcher's duel. But one of the teams was being no hit, and the other team had struck out with runners on third in every inning. That's how the first half of that game felt.
Right.
And I think so. And I think that's an interesting one. One of the things that's you look back and you think, were these teams scared of each other? Like, was there a reason that they weren't going for it on fourth down? Was there a reason they weren't taking as many shots downfield? We talked about this in the picks column, right? When we were talking about whether or not to bet the over, and we said probably not, because neither one of these teams is very aggressive on fourth down. They leave points. The Rams left something like 20 points, 25 points on the field in terms of borderline go for it, situations this year, and that bared out, right? They had situations where they could have went for it, maybe changed the game. The Patriots at the end of the game could have went for it to seal the game in one fell swoop. And again, it's just like, I think that's part of the conversation now, which is I think one of the benefits of having podcasts like this and conversations.
Well, it's all the credit goes to us. Yeah. The Patriots over 400 yards of offense, 13 points was the lowest number of points they could have scored, basically, given their offensive output. So, the fact that the idea that their offense was horrible in this game and there was a defensive battle is a little misconstrued here. Here's the question that I want to ask, though. What is your opinion of Sean McVay going into this game and after this game?
Well, so I think that there is a set of universes where Sean McVay ends up like Mike McCarthy, in that because the Packers were very much similar. They ran basically all 11 personnel. They did a little bit more with their backs splitting out, Randall Cobb being in the backfield, but they kind of ran the same thing all the time. Mm-hmm. And it was great when you had talent and you had the best quarterback and the league hadn't caught up to you. The league catches up to you. Do you have a counter? Now, far be it, my null hypothesis is that Sean McVay has a counter, right? But if the answer to that question is no, as you said, Cooper Kupp goes out, right? For the Packers, it was offensive line gets weaker, quarterback gets a little less efficient, receivers like Randall Cobb get a little older, Jordy Nelson gets hurt, and then all of a sudden you go from top-level offense to middling offense, getting a coach fired, et cetera, et cetera. I think he has to be more aggressive on fourth downs. He has to do more of those things. But from a play caller's perspective, he was great. As Sam said on Twitter, Sam Onsen, our colleague, his A move was great. But the Patriots never let you get there. They make you go with B, and the great ones have B. And so the real question is he going to be able to develop that? Yeah.
You had to, based on everything that he's shown, he understands Goff's limitations, right? Their whole offense is predicated on using play action and disguise to give Goff more time to throw, to make his reads simpler, and they use the quick game. They're the only team in the NFL that goes no huddle after a first down over a 15% clip. They do those, snap to the ball and run. They do so many things to help Goff out. The tough thing is that you can't necessarily adjust those things, and then to top it off, and this is the part, there are two things that happened that made me think less of Sean McVay, aside from the fourth down decision. We'll get to those fourth down decisions in a second, but The Patriots had used defensive line stunts over 50% of the time in the playoffs. You knew it was coming. They did 18 of 42 passing plays against the Rams, got pressure on 50% of them. Okay. Goff, when facing a stunt, took 3 sacks, averaged 3.4 yards per play. On all other dropbacks, 5.7 yards per play. They were unprepared for something that the Patriots had actually shown they were going to do.
Yeah. And that was the storyline, right? The Patriots were not a team with a ton of talent up front. Trey Flowers is a very good player, but aside from that, we saw Danny Sheldon make some plays yesterday. Adrian Claiborne, by his own admission, has one pass rush move.
Right.
And then they still were getting pressure.
And there was a lack of, and then on top of that, there was this sort of lack of usage of the things that actually were going to get them somewhere. So on first and second down, 3.5 yards per run play, 6.1 yards per pass play, almost 9 yards per play action pass play. But they only used play action at 33% rate, below their season average. They didn't sort of double down on the things that they should have done. They ran the ball 40% of the time on second down. Goff was a disaster on third down. You had to know that third down was not the optimal down for Jared Goff in this game. And yet they did things more often that you shouldn't do, which is the exact wrong time to do this, right? This is where you go to the other side. You lean heavily on the side of the optimal play, even if you sort of have been in the middle.
Yeah, and that's never really been a staple of the Rams. I don't have the numbers in front of me, but they don't not run the ball. They're not the Chiefs, right? They don't not run the ball.
The Chiefs are like 83%. Yeah, the Rams are closer to that 67, 70.
Which is like most
still
teams.
Very, it's better than most.
Yeah.
But it's not.
It's not popping, like they're not efficient on purpose. They're, from that perspective, they're efficient because they run a pretty good offense in terms of the plays and everything. But I think we won't talk about the Goff situation, I think, right now, but it will be something we've brought up at times in terms of his option, in terms of, what this Rams, if you just look at the Rams in terms of what they've committed to, 17 to Donald, Whitworth about 16, Cooks about 15, Brocker's 11, Barron is almost 10, Gurley almost 10, Peters 9. I mean, there's a lot of folks on that team that are currently getting paid more than the quarterback.
Yep.
And then, as you said, we have Cooper Kupp coming up here in a few. You have some players there, Nickel Roby-Coleman. Like they're going to have to start rewarding some of these players who were big for them.
Okay, well, this gives me my next question. We did this draft, 11-round draft of players in the Super Bowl.
Yep.
And I had the second pick. You had the first pick. You took Brady, of course. So I then took Goff and Belichick. You took McVay and Stephon Gilmore. I then took Donald and Talib. You took
Robert Woods
and Trey Flowers. I took Julian Edelman and Devin McCourty. You took, Jason McCourty. You took Gronk and Whitworth. What's interesting here is the top of this draft, I think. So Goff and Belichick versus Brady and McVay. I'm assuming you're going to take Brady and McVay here, but that is an interesting
Not really.
question.
I mean, because I think Belichick of those four had the best game yesterday. So you can.
So you're saying that I made the best pick of our draft. I think I did.
No, I think Stephon Gilmore was the best pick of the draft.
I would say Belichick was, given that it was out of left field. And he was the most valuable player, and I got him third overall.
But taking Gilmore
was great
in the third round when folks are like, a lot of how many casual football fans have ever heard of Stephon Gilmore before he made an interception last night?
Well, look, all you had to do was listen to Jim Nantz, who told you that he was the highest graded.
Say our name, Jim.
Okay, don't hate on Jim. Jim Nantz is the epitome of a company man, as I mentioned. Yep. I think he has a CBS emblazoned bathrobe that he wears because he has to remind himself that he's always an ambassador for CBS. The NFL is such that if you are not paying for sponsorship, you will be swiftly kicked in the butt if you somehow get sponsorship. So not allowed to say PFF. Chris has to do the same thing basically last year in the Super Bowl is the same way. So to be honest, the fact that he used graded out, I thought was good enough because we're the only company that is giving out grades. So when he says that and people go, Stephon Gilmore grade, even if they Google that, I've got to think that helps PFF. Love Jim Nance. I thought Romo had a subpar game.
Gilmore this season, almost 1,200 snaps, 1.93 WAR, highest among defensive backs. A little shade under Donald in terms of defensive players, but an all-time season for him. Very good year.
I think this Goff Belichick versus Brady McVay is so interesting because to me, there's no way that Belichick would go out there and let Jared Goff do the things that he repeatedly did, right?
Not after Nick Foles did it last year. Like that was a thing that we talked about as well. Nick Foles pantsed them last year. It was not happening this year.
Right. And to that point, if Belichick is the coach for Goff is also not going to spend all of his time sitting back there in the pocket. He is going to orchestrate some quick throws to beat that team. It was crazy. Goff was under pressure. It was under siege.
Yep.
And yet only 12% of his dropbacks was he under pressure in 2.5 seconds or less. Less than Brady, interestingly. Yep. So there just wasn't they just weren't variable enough as a team. So I'm leaning towards I would take Belichick and Goff versus Brady and McVay.
I think of that quartet, you won.
You would have never guessed this, right? Because I think the idea was, look, McVay is going to make some adjustments here, right? You had to think so.
The narrative was that he made adjustments in the NFC title game, and I think what really actually happened was that the Rams made a couple plays to scare off the crowd of the New Orleans, which was really what was causing all their issues, and then they just executed better.
You mentioned, one of the things you brought up was Goff's play under pressure, and people get so excited when they see someone play well under pressure.
Yep.
But you've got to realize it just mathematically is a fact that it is volatile. You can't expect that game to game. And this said it perfectly. Goff in the regular season, 5.8 yards per attempt under pressure, 24th, sacked about 17% of the time. In the NFC Championship game, though, 9.1 yards per attempt under pressure. He was fantastic. He had a couple of dump offs to tight ends that happened to be there, sort of out of happenstance. He flipped them out there and he gets them. Only sacked 1 of 12 times, 8%. Go to the Super Bowl, 3.6 yards per attempt under pressure, sacked 4 of 17 times. The pendulum just swings back, and all of a sudden, those X factor plays that you can't rely on, and then you compound that with this. He had 60% clean pockets. Brady had 80.
Yep. And we talked about this in our Spread Picks article, which was, if you looked at the whole season, Brady struggled in a clean pocket. Goff was far better. But if you looked at like the last 2 months of the season, Goff had sort of trended downward a little bit. Again, Kupp matters. I think the receiving core certainly matters here. And then, Brady was doing a lot better. And so, as much as we talk about McVay doing things that make Goff succeed, it does look like the Patriots made a concerted effort after, not only did Brady get injured a little bit against Tennessee, but also just that team was just like, under siege, to use your term. They did a lot to, I think, help, Brady out at his, older age.
Well, that was going to be my next thing. Let's talk a little bit about the Patriots offense, because it was actually not as bad as the 13 points
That's right.
made it out to be. And the key, they were so good at attacking the places that they knew the Rams were weakest. So I'm going to set you up for this. Brady to the slot, 164 yards, 11 yards per attempt, 109 rating. All other positions on the field, 98 yards, 5 yards per attempt, 43 rating. I think the slot and how the Rams decided to cover it was interesting.
Well, and that's what we talked about all offseason. Targets to the tight end, targets to the slot are worth about 10% more expected points added on a per-play basis than targets to the outside. At the strange thing here, and we talked about this, like everybody was talking about going into the game, how good the Rams were against the slot, how good they were the last 2 months of the season against the slot. And as much as we know coverage is unstable, we know that especially slot coverage is unstable. But what was crazy was Nickel Roby-Coleman, who I drafted, I believe. No, you drafted him.
I drafted him.
Was not the primary coverage player for Julian Edelman. He only allowed 1 catch to Edelman. Talib and Peters were on his coverage, I believe, 3 catches and 2 catches respectively. He was on a line. He was on Littleton twice. He was on a safety another time. that one was curious. And we were watching the game. We're like, why is Peters playing inside? He's an outside corner. Why is he tracking? He never has tracked before. And Talib, I don't mind Talib. Honestly, I thought that they were going to do what Denver did against Gronk back in 2015, which is put Talib on Gronk. It was clear that they didn't have the same kind of respect for Gronk that they had historically, having him covered with linebackers repeatedly. That one was interesting to me. Edelman roasted them. And I think that was one of the least expected things going into the game yesterday.
It was.
And he was a pick of yours.
Well, we got to stick together, us Northern California boys.
That's right.
Julian Edelman, a proud graduate of Woodside High School, a rival of Menlo Atherton High School, where I went. But you know what? When it comes down, you can be a rival. It's funny. So like you could be a rival in high school, and then all of a sudden you realize how big the world is. You go off to college. You're mid-20s, and all of a sudden, no, we weren't rivals. We're from the same area. All of a sudden, we're on the same team. But Julian Edelman, a great guy. It's so fantastic to see a guy like Julian Edelman. He epitomizes the Patriot way almost, I don't want to say more than Tom Brady, but at least just as much, because he was an absolute no one, was a quarterback, was told
that's a huge one. He's a quarterback.
Brady went to Michigan.
Yeah.
Okay, let's not.
Edelman went up the street here to Kent State.
By the way, Darren Ravel tweeted out Brady's resume for if he didn't get drafted. Two of his 4 jobs were working at a golf pro shop, which I thought was really funny. But Julian Edelman, was even more of a nobody, and through just pure want to, really has made himself
gumption, will,
grit, toughness.
But that's also the Patriot. Like Patrick Chung went from being a safety to basically like a linebacker slot corner now. Over and over again that you see guys like that are their linebackers are basically what edge linebacker hybrids. It is the Patriot way, taking something that no one else would want and turn them into something usable. And in Edelman's case, great.
I want to talk about some of the smaller, the more micro things that happen in this game. We've talked about some of the bigger, kind of game-wide things that the teams did, but individual decisions that had big impacts on this game, and there were quite a few. The first one that comes to mind, the Rams, 4th and 3 at the Patriots 42. This is in the first quarter still? Yes, still in the first quarter. Couple of minutes left in the first quarter. What was your thought when you see it get to 4th and 3? You just talked about how McVay has been a little suboptimal with those decisions. I talked about it coming into this game. Would he have learned from not going for it and still winning?
But you and I don't think this way. We were looking at 3rd and 3, and we are already thinking about 4th down, right? So, I wasn't surprised. I actually, so we were talking about, I think on the pod or some of the 2.5 passers in the game. I totally thought that this would be a situation where they would run a fake, but I wasn't surprised that they didn't go for it. Honestly, it just doesn't seem like it. The one time you can remember them going for it was literally when Jared Goff had to talk them into it in Seattle, and this. So it wasn't surprising for me, even though it was super suboptimal.
So the decision here is whether to punt or go for it. That's a key distinction here. So it's 4th and 3 at the 42. About a 60% chance of converting in this situation. The difference between the going for it and kicking is about 5% win probability points. 48% if you decide to go for it. That factors in all of the possibilities. You turn it over, right? That is a possibility. But you're not going to gain that many yards on average when you punt the ball and you have an opportunity to keep the possession. Losing 5% chance to win the game in the first quarter is humongous.
Huge.
A really, really big mistake. The game is tied at that point.
It's basically the difference between, it's like half of the difference between going from being home team to away team.
Really, it's huge. And, I can't believe he didn't go for it there. Then there's another decision here. This one's on Jared Goff. It's 3rd and 2. They're at the 47, 4:50 to go in the second. Now the Pats lead by 3. And just what you said, if it's 3rd and 3, we're thinking about the 4th down. I'm thinking about the 4th down here. Jared Goff drops back, takes 45 seconds to run around, and takes a 14-yard sack.
It was unreal.
So who knows if they would have gone for it? Maybe McVay continues to not make the smart decision. The smart decision on 4th and 2 there from the 47 would have been to go. Were they to, throw the ball away, get to that 4th and 2 and go for it, 41% chance to win. After the sack, obviously you've got a punt, 35% chance to win. A loss of 6%. This may very well have been the difference in the game.
I mean, going for that, right. So the middle of the field is where a lot of these things happen, right? Like, we're talking about like prior to the halftime, like punts were the plays that flipped the most win probability. Right. And it's going from being in the middle of the field to not being in the middle of the field or crossing the middle of the field. And in this particular case, the Rams had the most important thing in football, which is the ball. They were in New England side of the field, and not only did they not only crossed the middle of the field, they gave up the ball. So it's like a huge,
By the way, shout out to Josh. Was it Josh Hermsmeyer who called that to our attention? We checked it out. It happened to be the case with our model as well. I think, but if you want, if you're listening out there, if you somehow don't know what NFL scrape R is and you're proficient in R, you're not proficient in R, you should check it out because it's open source. Easy accessibility to looking at EPA, win probability, all that stuff. Ron Yurko, who has done a ton of work on that. It's fantastic stuff. So check it out. So those are the 2 4th down decisions for the Rams. They blow those. So as a result, the Patriots have this chance to go down and seal the game. And what they did on that touchdown drive has been much ballyhooed. They ran the same play 3 straight times, all this stuff. But really what they did is they came out and they went heavy on 4 straight plays. The first one, which was the little Gronk on Ebicam, they were in 21 personnel. They basically said, we're going to find these linebackers, we're going to attack them.
We're going to give everything Gronk has left in this world.
They shot him up right before the play, and they hit Gronk to Ebicam. Then they come out in 22 personnel, 2 tight ends, 2 running backs, but they go 5 wide. Crazy thing here. So all of these are 1st and 2nd down plays. There were 11 instances in the NFL this season of teams going 22 personnel and splitting out to 5 wide. 3 of them happened on this drive by the Patriots to the tune of 16 yards per play. They hit Edelman over the middle, then they hit Burkhead on the comeback, and then they have to double Edelman. If you watch this play over, they literally bring a guy down to double Edelman, which basically puts 1 safety in the back, means the linebacker is going to be one-on-one. It was Corey Littleton, I believe, with Gronk. Brady finally throws a good pass down the field, and there you have it. I mean, that was the difference in the game. But
even though James Devlin didn't push the ball over the end zone,
I was going crazy because I had the James Devlin first touchdown prop. It was plus 3,800. I'm losing my mind at the 1 yard line. But that summed up the game so perfectly. The Patriots are able to change on the fly. They're like water. Right? They can be ice, they can be a gas, they can be a liquid. They can morph.
Chameleon.
Even better. The Rams are, what they were, and they probably will be.
And unfortunately, when a team is as good at, so obviously Belichick, our coaching metrics, all those kinds of things, when you are good enough with 2 weeks off, you're good enough to sort of stop that first, that first thing a team has. When your quarterback isn't as flexible as a Brady, when he's
pliable, you might say,
then that's you get what you had yesterday, which is 3 points for one of the most explosive offenses in the NFL.
All right, the last big decision here: the Patriots are winning the game. They're up 10-3. They have a 4th and probably half-inch. So, about a minute 13 left to go in the game.
Yep.
And the question here is, do you kick the field goal? If you kick the field goal, you got 13-3, you're up 10. Presumably, the game is over. If you go for it, you have to gain half-inch. And if you gain that half-inch, the game is actually, for certain.
And Brady's rushing attempts prop is also over.
Brady's rushing attempts prop is on the line. My bet of Patriots -2.5 is safe at this point. But from I want to optimize my chances of winning the game perspective, going for it here gives you about 90% chance to win the game. You've got a pretty darn good chance to convert.
I mean,
there.
it's almost entirely in the probability of converting.
Yes.
But also tacked on to that is how good your defense has been, because you have to. I mean, the worst case scenario is you give up 8.
Yes.
And your defense has given up 3 so far.
And it's probably higher than that.
It's probably higher than
because
that
we always
games.
count full yards.
Yeah.
And this was a half
a yard.
So they decide to kick the field goal, and everyone, it's weird the way that people think about this, because it's like, oh no, they got to kick the field goal here. Well, they go up by 2 scores.
Because they don't realize that not all points are created equally, right? Because those 3 points give the ball back to the Rams in theory, unless there's an onside kick. And the Rams have a minute 10, and if there were to be a miracle, a 10-point swing in the last 2 minutes, or minute 10, it has to happen with the Rams having the ball. The Patriots convert. Not only do they convert, but they never give the ball back. So even if you're doing a simple comparison of what's the probability of converting a sneak or whatever play on 4th and 1 versus what's the probability of Gostowski hitting a non-trivial 41-yard field goal, the latter is more probable than the former.
The edge goes to the option
that
helps you seal the game.
Right, and there's secondary and tertiary probabilities associated with kicking a field goal or missing a field goal that aren't involved in the one side of the 4th and 1, which is conversion, right? And so that's also why, and to go off on another tangent, that's also why that whole, when you're up by 3 and you're at the opponent's 20 and it's 4th and short, do we kick a field goal to make the other team score a touchdown, or do we just go for it here? That's why the going for it is easily the better play, because the secondary type stuff is the other team now knows they need a touchdown. They're going to be more aggressive. Yep. They're not going to Vance Joseph it up and play for a 51-yard field goal, all that kind of stuff. And that's all the stuff that can happen when the bad things happen. Yeah. And if you convert, the game's over, right? And you don't even put your defense on the field again. And I understand the whole, I understand why it is. We talked about this before. I want to show my defense I believe in them, blah, blah, blah. But it's foolhardy, right? You want to show your offense, you believe they can kneel the ball down.
Charities, blah, blah, blah. Yeah. It was not what I expected from Belichick, but given all of the amazing things that he did in this game to orchestrate pressure, it was the last thing that I'll talk about, the last sort of singular play that was massive was after this, right, to actually end the game. They had blitzed Goff a lot. Okay, they had blitzed him actually almost half the time, which is the 3rd highest blitz rate for a Patriots defense all season. But they brought a 0 blitz with 7 pass rushers one time, and it was perfect. They had everyone covered. They had close coverage on everyone. It forces Goff to make a suboptimal throw. Stephon Gilmore is right there to make the interception. That was the brilliance, and it was the difference that culminated in that play. But if you watch this game, the Patriots did the little things that the Saints didn't do. On play action, Kyle Van Noy is destroying the outlet,
the bump angle route.
The bump angle route, exactly. Those little things that keep you from getting 5 yards on first down, all of a sudden you're in 3rd and 8 and Jared Goff is petrified, right? All those little things that they did culminated in that one play. It was a great, defensive mind effing.
And to the Rams' credit, they didn't try to establish the run or anything like they, you know what I'm saying? People are calling for them right now to say, they should be, they didn't run the ball too much, in my opinion, because the game was close the whole time. Their amount of rushing attempts wasn't egregious, but they did try play action. They probably should have thrown the ball on 2nd down and long more. They probably should have ran even more play action, but it wasn't this egregious run pass split that I thought could have happened, with Gurley coming back and them wanting to prove a point.
The point that was proved is that the broadcast networks have literally no idea what is happening on a football field, because poor Tracy Wolfson was probably, just badgering the PR
so
person
frustrating.
For the Rams.
Either they're lying to her or they're telling her the truth, which has been the same since the divisional round.
Gurley's a fantastic athlete. He does not change the calculus for this Rams team one bit. In fact, I made this point earlier to you when we were watching the game again. The Patriots are, when they went 22 and they went 5 wide, the reason that's effective is not just because they went 5 wide. It's because all 5 of those guys that went wide can catch the ball.
Yeah, right. With
Todd Gurley and this 11 personnel, you don't split him out wide and everyone freaks out. He's not that type of back, and that's really where.
And they're not that type of offense.
Not that type of offense. This was not about Todd Gurley at all. I think that the Rams, to win this game, should have recognized we have got to crank up the things we do well. They cannot be running the ball 40% of the time on second down. They need to be using play action 50, 60% of the time. I don't understand why that's a taboo thing. The Patriots literally did it in last year's Super Bowl. Yeah. They ran play action 50% of the time in the first half, and it worked.
They think it's cheap, though. It's back to this whole, like...
I don't think McVay sits in bed at night worrying about whether his offensive strategy is cheap.
No, do you disagree that people think, or folks?
I disagree. I'm going to protect Sean. I think Sean McVay is going to ascend the McCarthy bar that you've set for him. I have higher standards for my man.
I think
Sean
it's
McVay.
fair though, because if he goes the wrong way, it's going to look a lot like. Well, the cheap thing I think is more league wide. People are like, oh, it's a, they don't like. I mean, it's kind of why they often buy stallions to play running back. It's like, well, it's just cheap to pick up Damian Williams off the scrap heap
and have him be great.
And have him be great. It's cheap to go with C.J. Anderson. So to McVay's credit, he doesn't think it's that way because he was giving him every other series. I mean, basically
they ran play action, their staple, less than they did on average this season. That is egregious to me. On second down, as I mentioned, they ran the ball 40% of the time, 6 yards per play. Pats on second down, 8.3 yards per play. But here's the kicker. Rams using play action on second down, 9.3 yards per play. You've got to do the things. You've got to press your advantage, even if it's very slim. They did not. I won the bet. I had Pats minus 2.5. However, the pick that we decided to print, Pats minus 0.5, was never even a question in the first half.
You and me
minus 0.5 in the first half.
At the party, sweating this last 3 minutes out.
Oh my God.
Was just something to behold. Because you knew Greg the Leg. If they got to the 40.
Well, Gostowski had already missed one field goal.
Right.
Brady had thrown an absolute duck. He had 2 turnover-worthy plays in the first half. It was horrific. He made up for it. Credit to Tom, but it was looking like a terrible. The Rex Burkhead over 2 catches, destroyed by a penalty. The one penalty called all game.
C.J. Anderson, his first catch, I'm waving him back. He gets tackled after 3 yards.
Please give me some credit. I told you he was going to pick up a dump off. I told you this.
Right, you did. Well, that's why we were originally going to go with under half a catch.
Right.
So
talked you into out of that one.
I was wrong about C.J. Anderson's role in the passing game. He did get 12 yards on 2 catches. We had the Brady over 1.5 because after the miss by Zerline, he did take a knee.
Got over 2. The James Devlin first touchdown would have set this over the top. I would not be here today if James Devlin had scored that first touchdown. I'd be on my way to Mexico. But it's nice that I'm still here because we can actually pretend to dress up cover up the meat sweats that we have.
The meat sweats heavy. So
from all the Sampo Ranta that we had.
Our locks of the week improved as the season progressed. Let's go with that.
The great thing is that even though actual football games are over, if you're a complete degenerate whack job, the AAF is now here for you. And if you're not a degenerate whack job, you're only slightly insane neurotic person, the NFL draft is coming. And so that's exciting. And you can watch the combine.
And hopefully if you guys are listening,
binoculars.
As you listen to this and if you have ideas for pre-draft content, send them our way. We will do something on the draft each week.
We will not listen to you. That's not true.
Yeah.
We've got a lot of fun stuff, though, that you have been working incredibly hard on to leverage our college data. I think the thing that gets overlooked about PFF is that we put in more work to do college than we do the NFL, given the number of man hours that it takes.
And it's starting to bear fruit in terms of predictive power, 5 years of college data, which means 4 years of college to pro data. It's pretty good, and I'm really excited for us to be able to you give away some of it on the podcast, but a lot of it is just like behind the scenes and frankly a lot of fun.
So questions that you have, shoot them our way. Kyler Murray will be going first overall.
Well, he should be going first overall.
He will be going
first. The AAF stuff, I think we'll start at the end of the week. We'll talk about, because we're not going to give out picks, but we will talk about what you would do if you tried to start a league from scratch and you wanted to use data to make projections.
Oh, we already know who the better drafter is, so.
Well, no, you're just haughty because you won your steak dinner back after my Twitter hiatus.
Yes.
So now we're like even. Does that mean we go to 2 dinners, or does that mean we go to 0? Do they cancel? It's a really good question.
Maybe we just go to 1 dinner and split the bill. Everyone wins.
Everyone wins.
Unlike the Super Bowl where everyone lost.
I just wanted everybody to have fun yesterday.
Gronk.
I just wanted everybody to have fun.
Okay, let's get out of here on this. The biggest winner from last night's Super Bowl wasn't Romo.
No. In my opinion,
Chris Collinsworth still, shockingly,
the
best color commentator in all of football.
This is going to make me sound like a huge homer.
But you were going to say something else because you got an email last night.
Oh, sorry,
James Devlin that said you were a big homo, not homer.
I love the implication that like women and gay people can't talk about football as well as we can.
Well, the funny thing is, I thought you should have responded. So this guy, if you haven't seen, go to Eric's Twitter because he got an email from a guy
who called himself James Devlin.
Yeah, called himself James Devlin and told Eric that he was frankly acting like a big woman. You're nothing more than a big homo that doesn't watch the film. And so I thought that Eric should have responded with, this is ridiculous. I do watch the film. Because the idea that any of the other things have anything to do with you not being able to analyze football is everything that's wrong with America.
Which, of course, I just tweeted out that the game's on in the background, which I thought was fairly funny. So,
biggest winner.
I still think if you're the favorite to win the Super Bowl next year, which the Chiefs are, you look at that game and the bar doesn't appear too high for you. So for them, I'm not gonna say we, for them, I thought last night going into 2019, you think of yourself, you say, listen, this is not insurmountable.
So the biggest winner were the Kansas City Chiefs.
Yes.
I can't believe that you somehow managed to wrangle them in.
Okay, but here's the thing: if
amazing,
if you watch last night's game,
I don't disagree.
You come out of last night's game and say, Brady's still the GOAT. Brady played an okay game.
Yeah, he was okay.
It was okay. He's not like, it's not like watching like when Manning was starting to play with Denver, and you're like, and I as a person who watched the Chiefs, I was like, they're never going to win the AFC West again.
Yeah,
like I don't get that feeling about Brady.
He had a right tackle as his number 2 option. Chris Hogan couldn't separate.
But all those things contribute
Chris Hogan
to next
couldn't
year,
separate from a defender that had to start in New England to cover him. And the Rams do have a lot of talent on defense. I'm not going to all of a sudden write Tom Brady
the Rams went all in to win the Super Bowl this year, and they didn't. They're going to have a tough decision with Goff, tough decision with the guys we talked about. If you're a team that's still sort of on that leading edge of having a rookie quarterback deal, I do think last night's game showed that the league might be widening in terms of its distribution.
I have 3 winners. The real winner, Bill Belichick. He's the biggest winner last night. The funny winner is Todd Gurley because he didn't play a whole ton and now gets to say, I was the reason we lost. And probably the biggest winner of all last night were the New Orleans Saints.
I don't disagree. Well, what would the game? So to end on this again, what does the game look like if the Saints play?
I think it ends up being 20-17 Patriots.
That's not bad. I think the Saints do more to counter what the other team is doing to them.
You know what I'll tell you about the Saints? They go for both those 4th downs.
Yep. Well, no doubt about it.
There is zero chance that Sean Payton is ever.
Yeah.
Sean Payton will die on that field before he will send his punter out there at the 42.
They would go for it at the 42.
I'm writing Sean Payton in for president. All right, we'll see you guys later. Peace out.